everybody, and welcome back to the Blu-ray Hunter. I'm the Blu-ray Hunter, Jonathan Moody, and I've got a fun show for you guys. We're gonna be talking about this is a new show. This is a new series I wanted to do last year, like last see time, and I ended up not doing it. So this is the time I'm gonna do it. So I'm gonna talk about a movie that is the a director's first film that I think is, pretty much uh blows it all away, like first early works, And so I decided to talk about the 1994 film Clerks. And first of all, I want to get into like a little bit of history for it for me personally because I'm a huge fan of Kevin Smith. Kevin I will say this. Kevin Smith's the one who got me into wanting to become a filmmaker. The longest time I wanted to be an actor and stuff or a Ghostbuster, but I could still be a Ghostbuster. My friend Nicole's a Ghostbuster, so maybe I could not a Ghostbuster, but she hunts ghosts, so maybe I could help. I don't know. But the thing is, I wanted to be a actor for the most part. And then I discovered Kevin Smith, and all that changed. And I started to not that I thought like, oh man, if he could do it, I could do it, but more or less if he as a filmmaker went out and made his own movie. Now, I've explained this before in different things, but when I was younger, I didn't know that was even possible. I did not know you could go out and make your own movie. I didn't think that was a thing. I thought you had to go to Hollywood, you had to be a Hollywood filmmaker, you had to make a movie in Hollywood. That was it. There was no other there were no other options out there because that's all I watched was Hollywood movies. One day I'm over at my friend's house. This is 1996. I want to say 95, 96. I think it was 96. Because I came to my friend's house and his mom and him started yelling about something. She was yelling at him about not doing something or whatever, and I felt kind of uncomfortable, I don't really like it when that kind of situation happens. So I went into one of the rooms and I saw my friend's brother watching a movie. And I said, "What's this?" And he goes, "Mallrats." And I said, "What's it about?" It was like, people in a mall, or I was like, "Do you mind if I watch?" And he was like, "Sure." So I watched it and I laughed my butt off. So Mallrats was my introduction to Kevin Smith. So, that was amazing. I love that. And that's the Arrow release, that actually has a lot of cool special features and different stuff in it. And so I found out about this movie Mallrats, and I was like, "What is this movie Mallrats? Like, what is going on here?" And then I found out that Jay and Silent Bob were in another movie before called Clerks. So I was like, "Ooh, I gotta see this movie, Clerks," which is the one we're gonna really talk about. And so I started diving into Clerks and finding out information. And one of the biggest information that I found out was the movie that inspired him to be a filmmaker is a little movie called Slacker because he was just like me. He did not realize you could actually go out and just make a movie with your friends or people, or whatever. And his thing with Slacker was like, oh my goodness, you can have dialogue, like nothing but dialogue in your movie. And, because that's what he loved to do was make dialogue. So he was like, I could do a whole movie, just dialogue. Okay, that's great. So the kernel of stuff. Also, The Dark Backward was one of the movies he saw, first movies he saw. I interviewed the director, Adam Rifkin, years ago, and just a great guy. Um, and then that movie, Clerks, and this movie, Ed Wood, both helped, both black and white, both got me into wanting to become a filmmaker. Both about low budget, filmmaking, both low budget filmmaking. One's a Hollywood movie about low budget filmmaking, the other one's a low budget film. And those are the two movies that inspired me. Uh, so why did I pick Clerks to start this whole thing off? Because I'm going to be talking about other people's early works. Maybe not their first films always, but like early, if they have like 100 films, I want to talk about their like second or third or fourth film, something like that, something they did early on in their career that like, kind of helped them along the way. This movie definitely helped them along the way. It helped them get some notoriety. They were able to go make Mallrats. It bombed. They made Chasing Amy. It did well. They did Dogma. It did even better. They did James Bond Strike Back. Did even more. They did Clerks 2 eventually, and then Clerks 3. And even though I'm not a huge fan of Clerks 3, I think it's got its moments and maybe it'll grow on me in time. Um, I have that on 4K, by the way. It's right now, the only Kevin Smith movie I have on I think other than 430 movie, which I still need to buy his newest one. I think it's one of the only ones that, well, I have Mallrats on 4K. That's right. So I have Mallrats and I have Clerks 3. I need all the rest of them on 4K. Upgrade them all, Kevin. I will buy them each and every one of them. Again, because even though I have them on Blu-ray, the only ones I don't have are like Yoga Hosers and Red State, because Red State went out of print and it's really, really hard to buy. So unless they somehow bring that back, I have Dogma, interestingly enough, which is out of print as well, and they are bringing that back. But I got the Dogma Blu-ray. I bought it at a grocery store, and was not expecting it to like be something that would become like a out of print item, you know. People would pay me for that, thing or whatever, pay me good money for that shit. Uh, sell it to them? Fuck no. Then I wouldn't have it. Why would I do that? Um, I don't understand people who buy things just to sell them. Like, I mean, I guess you're flipping them and making them more money, but like, to me, I'm a collector. I like to collect them. When I'm dead, I don't know who's gonna have my collection. I'll have to make a will out and say all my Blu-rays go to Goodwill. I don't think I could just give them to, unless somebody really wanted them, all of my collection, like Paul or somebody wanted all my collection. He can have it. Um, I don't think he would though, because he doesn't even like having so many of his own movies. Um, so yeah, these are the movies that inspire me. This Ed Wood inspired me to go out and do it. Slacker inspired me because after watching that movie, I get it why Clerks was inspired by it. Clerks inspires me. Mallrats inspires me to go out and just and I loved Mallrats. Mallrats was a fun fucking movie. I'm sad that it didn't make as much money in the box office. I really hope they do make Mallrats too, because I would watch that in a heartbeat. Um, there's an audience for it for sure. Um, but aside from that, I think what I love about Clerks, and let's get into Clerks. Let's get into the early works of Clerks. So Clerks was this movie made for 30, no, it's $27,000. He used credit card. He sold his comic book collection, which later he bought back. He asked money, borrowed money, whatever he could to just get this movie made. And so he went to film school. It felt like it was a waste of time. Met Scott Mosier though, and then he wrote Clerks, which originally was called Inconvenience, and he went out and made this movie. Inconvenience was more Twin Peaksy, was more weird, and it was about a person who works the late night shift at a convenience store and all the weird people that come in there. I would love, I hope Kevin has like a copy of that script. I would love to see that someday. Like, I would love to see what made it in and what didn't make it in, and what possible jokes did he have that just didn't, that ended up getting cut. So that would have been awesome. So then they started to, get the ball rolling. They cast the film. They got Brian O'Halloran, Marilyn Ghigliotti, Lisa Spoonhour, Jason Mewes, and himself as Bob. If you want to know more about that, how the casting thing, there's a great documentary. I think it's on this Blu-ray. Um, so I liked the DVD that they released a lot better than this because I feel like there was some stuff missing. but they do have the first cut version, which has the infamous ending, alternate scene um uh where what's his name Dante gets killed, which didn't happen, which they cut out of the movie because they did not want to kill off well, they were told not to kill off the main star who they've been just watching for so long and like connecting with. And thank God they didn't, because later there were comic books, there was sadly there were no novels, but there were comic books, and I used to have all the comic books. I don't think I still do, sadly. I wish I did. Maybe I do somewhere. But there was the Lost Scene comic. There was all these awesome comic books from them. There was a cartoon series. There wasn't pilot for a live action series starring Jim Brewer. That was not licensed by Kevin. Disney did it, and it just was terrible. Excuse me. Um, so Clerks also had in this thing it has I think if I'm correct, it does have it says, "Oh, what a lovely tea party! The making of Jane Silent Bob Strike Back." I don't know why it has that. It's got the snowball effect, the story of Clerks, which is the long documentary. It's like a feature-length documentary about it. I mean, it's got a lot on this disc. I mean, it's incredible. I love it. I think it's an amazing movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend watching it. It's about these two guys who one works at the convenience store and the other one works at a video store whenever he feels like it. So then it's right next door. So he locks up and comes over to the other guy and starts talking to him. And it's just like that, where they just start talking. I think right there, uh, they're watching the guy going through all the, gallons of eggs or whatever, the egg guy and everything. And then, Kevin Smith's sister, Virginia Smith, comes up and talks to them and says her character masturbates animals for insemination and stuff, and it's just so funny. It is made for a low budget. uh you wouldn't know that these people were not stars at the time. um to me, they're huge stars. Brian O'Halloran, Marilyn Gigalotti, Lisa Spoonhour, rest in peace. I absolutely love every single one of them. Jason Mewes went on to become Jay and Silent Bob, and they got that career going for them. That's just so incredible. All because they went out and made this little movie that Kevin didn't even know was going to do everything, but all it takes is you taking that chance to put it out somewhere. Somebody sees it, somebody likes it, and then boom, it's probably a lot harder now. So also what makes this movie great is it was right time, right place, kind of thing. So in the early 90s, and whatnot, maybe even late 80s, but early 90s, there's this indie boom. Now, I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a history, but I could be wrong on things. I am not a historian by any stretch of the imagination, but I am a big fan. And so I hear what I hear. Some might be misinformation or something, or I misunderstood. So just bear with me. But from what I understood, so back in the 70s, there was a lot of like control for the filmmakers. The filmmakers had complete control, and they were able to go make the movies that they wanted to make. Sidney Lumet, Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, all these directors were making the movies that they wanted to make. And then along comes like sort of the 80s. 80s became this like the I think if we're gonna blame anybody, we're gonna blame the studios like Fox and whatnot that made Star Wars, because Star Wars became this huge hit, and there were lines around the block waiting to just go see the movie and everything. And some people couldn't even get into the movie because it was such a huge line. They'd have to go to another showing or whatever, and all these movies were sold out. And it's not like that anymore. I mean, really, uh, everybody buys tickets online. We live in a completely different thing. Like you don't even have to, like they're not, my Regal cinema does not even hang out in the front anymore. It's just weird. They hang out like when you walk in, they scan your thing or whatever. Or I guess they also give you tickets if you want to book now, but like everything's electronic and stuff. It's such a different world we live in. Um, I don't know if it's better or worse, like whatever it is. It's just it is where we are right now, whether we like it or not. It's just go with it. And if you don't want to go with it, don't. I don't care. Um, but really nothing you can do about it. I don't think there's going to be any kind of change back to the way it was because they find it more sufficient and efficient to do it this way. So anyway, the studios were giving the directors more power, all this stuff. So, and this is where I think things are going to change soon. And I'm going to use this as my platform to kind of speak on my opinion on the film industry and how things are shaping and changing right now. And it's because of, and you'll see why. Like it's uh Quentin Tarantino said that um the 80s was like the worst decade for film. 90s became better, and then 2000s whatever, and then 2020 he says is now the worst decade. Now, I don't believe that. I think maybe for regular films that aren't like horror films are really raging. That some movies aren't that great and whatever. We'll get into that. So, the 70s, they were more controlled. Everybody was doing great. Godfather, Apocalypse Now, even though that had a lot of trouble, still did financially well. And the studios were happy. But then Star Wars came along, blew everything out of the water, and the studios got weird about everything. They wanted more sequels and whatnot, which I mean, films were having those, but it was definitely a different thing. So what happens is the studios like Fox, Universal, um Warner Brothers, all these companies, they started to look at like, okay, we need to make movies like this. We need to make movies with a built-in audience already, just like Star Wars has. We've got to, start merchandising because that's what George Lucas did, and it did very well for them. So now everything became merchandise. Excuse me one second. So merchandise and all that stuff. Then the 80s came along, and that's like all that was. And then, there's a few movies like Fast Times at Ridgemont High and other movies like that were sort of like the end of that like time period of whatever. And then the late 80s and early 90s, people started making movies on their own. So, like again, like indie directors started coming. Spike Lee started coming out. Jim Jarmusch came out, and then we had people like Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, and then Kevin Smith. And Kevin Smith was at that sort of, I think he was almost at the last gasp of these indie people. I don't want to say that like he was the last one, but he was one of probably close to the last of these indie filmmakers who made movies by themselves, got them produced and basically, ended up making independent art and stuff, financially by themselves, self-financed sort of things and whatnot. Tarantino did that with got a lot of that stuff financed independently for Reservoir Dogs, and El Mariachi was independently done for like $7,000. And yeah, I mean that was the big thing. So like Clerks was this kind of phenomenon. Like nobody had made a movie like Clerks. And it did very well. It all of a sudden it blew up. Siskel and Ebert gave it like two thumbs up and then gave two thumbs down for Mallrats and then two thumbs up back up for Chasing Amy. So like, they weren't happy with Mallrats, but it was an audience that like loved it, a cult audience like myself, who just completely got it. And I became a View Askew nut. I started watching all these things, and then so the studios were still, trying to do that, and then the superhero genre subgenre came out and did exceptionally well. Spider-Man did so good opening weekend and stuff. And the Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, I don't think did as well. But like those movies were killing it in the box office. And people were like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" And so they ended up putting um they ended up wanting to make sure they recaptured that all the time. And then the MCU really blew it up with doing their own cinematic universes. Other people, including myself, I have my own cinematic universe called the Echo Lake universe. Started doing that stuff independently or feature length and stuff and things, but the studios were still very much in control. And then 2016 rolled around. And I'm gonna say that. And I think I'm gonna give that date. And I'm gonna get in some trouble with saying this, but there was a lot of problems with the world that we were living in at that time. There wasn't enough people of color. If you watch Kevin Smith's movies, uh he didn't get people of color until I want to say until Chasing Amy. Then he did. But I don't think there any. I don't think there was any person of color in Mallrats. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Um, but then Chasing Amy, but like that was the thing. Like there was a lot of like talk about how, there wasn't enough movies featuring African American people or Asian descent people, things like that. And there was sort of like a strike at the Oscars. There was a whole thing called Oscars So White, and it became a big deal. And so a lot of people are afraid of that. Like they started getting afraid and they wanted to put put people in that position and stuff instead of just and then what they would do and this is sort of where I kind of got really upset. Like they would just not create a whole character like they did the Black Panther, which was a fucking amazing movie. Don't get me wrong. I love that movie. But that movie was basically a big hit and everything. And so they should have done more. They should have found more characters that were, they had Luke Cage for the Netflix stuff. They should have brought that more into the like the MCU world or whatever. But anywho, they started to kind of they do stuff like they would cast a African American person or a white person. And instead of finding a role that was right for that person, they kind of forced things into stuff. And that became like people got less and less interested in seeing movies. Not just because of that, but there was a lot of stuff. The storylines became more about the color of people's skins than it was about the story, about the original core of the story. And I feel like it was because people felt like they had to send a message and stuff. But we've had movies where they sent messages out and they were done so well and wonderfully that they didn't need to like do it in your face, kind of thing. So anywho, I think now things have shifted once again. The movies like Joker 2 did not do very well. I will not call it whatever its name is, Joker Folly something or whatever. Um, Joker 2 did not do very well. and it kind of sucks because I was kind of looking forward to it, and I did essentially like a lot of it. I feel like they made a lot of big mistakes. First of all, making it a musical, I think was whoever thought that was a great idea, should have been canned because that just did not work for that thing. And it Lady Gaga is an amazing voice, but like find her another musical, like like don't force a musical into Joker, because it just felt strange. It felt like not even it didn't even feel good, like they did that and stuff. Um, so Joker 2 did not do well, and then Terrifier 3 did very well. Now, Terrifier 3 did not make, $300 million like, you know, it's like Joker 2 should have made. Um, but it did $50 million on a I think $2 million movie, I think was what it was called, what it was. So it made probably more than $50 million on a two, like it made over $50 million basically around that, and it's still making money and everything. So my thing was that all of a sudden I think the studios are getting kind of pissed about that. Like, how is it that indie movies are doing really well in the box office, and our Hollywood movies are not? And a lot of that is because the there is no agendas in any of these indie films a lot of times. There's just pure fun and carnage, just silliness or gore or whatever. Horror has been doing amazing this year. 2024 has been just blowing up, and I am so happy to be a horror film lover like you have no idea. I just saw Werewolves, which I'll be doing if I haven't already done the review, I'll be doing a review of it for horror film lovers. I absolutely love that movie. Had a blast. My boy Stephen C. Miller went out and made a movie financially self-financed and self-distributed it and put it out, and it is available everywhere. I mean, I want to see more of that. I think it's gonna happen. These theaters want to get people packed in to the rooms and at least want people to check the movie out. So yeah, I think what's going to end up happening is there's two things that are going to have happens. And I think Kevin Smith even mentioned this, or somebody did, where a the indie films are going to rise again. And that's what happened with in the late 80s and early 90s. The independent films rose. So the uh all of a sudden the Hollywood movies had to stop and they had to compete with those. So they had to make $20 million movies that competed with those that were like also sort of their version of an indie movie, Screen Gems or what is it? God, it's on the bank of my head. Uh, well, there's a ton of these things. There's anyway, there's a lot of these companies that are like Touchstone for Disney, Hollywood Pictures for Disney. They need to bring that back, and I think they're going to. It may not be Touchstone. They may have like left that alone, but they're probably going to create a smaller division of Disney that's going to make more movies that people want to see. That's more adults like, because that's also what people want. People don't just want to go to not everybody has kids, so they don't ever, and not every adult wants to go see a kids movie. They want to see a movie like Bike Riders that came out this year. They want to see things like that. That could be potentially Academy Award winning bait. Movies like Prince of the City from the 80s, they want to see that. That's what they want to see. But the thing is, they're not being made right now because the hardcore audience they think is children. But no, it's not. Deadpool and Wolverine just made millions of dollars in the box office, billions maybe, in the box office. It did exceptionally well for an R-rated movie. Probably did the best R-rated, they thought Joker 2 was going to compete to it, but it did not. Um Sadly, it did not. Um, and I like what James Gunn is doing with the DC universe. And the great thing about the DC universe, the DC studios, is that the DC world is darker, so they can do more rated R stuff. And I hope they start learning from that and start doing more rated R horror films too, like Suicide Squad was and stuff like that. Like I would love to see more of that. Um, so that's the thing. Like, of course, the kids aren't even reading comics anymore, so as much as they used to. And so they need to keep these movies alive right now, and everything. And just do stuff for not just kids but adults. And I think we're gonna see that. We're gonna see resurgence of that. Also, we're gonna see one thing that people have discussed, maybe it was Kevin Smith, but it was also I believe Bob Iger said something about this, is that they need to make movie watching an experience because we live in a time right now where over next to me is my television. Now, it might not have Dolby surround sound in my bedroom, which I don't need, but I have that up in my living room. Um, you can get the theater quality on a big screen TV. You don't have to get the biggest screen ever, but like a pretty big TV. And you can watch these movies on 4K and it looks just incredible, sometimes better than the movie theaters show them. And so, what I feel like is going to happen is that there's going to be something that's going to try to attract people back into the theaters. I think they were working on that, like some kind of special thing where people can treat it like going to Broadway, a Broadway show. You get dressed up, you go out with your date, and you go sit in a movie, and nobody's going to interrupt you or do anything. But I think that means that the price of tickets are going to have to skyrocket, and only the people who really, really want to go are the people who are going to pay to see it, and stuff. So. Um, I don't like that idea because I already pay $20 a month for my Regal Pass, unlimited pass, so I can watch unlimited amount of movies. But who knows? That could be the thing that they do. I don't know. I can't say for sure because I don't know the future. That's in the future. But I do know that they are working on something to try to get people back into the theaters because theaters are sort of dying, and it's because we live in a world where we have a theater on our phone. Why do we need to go to the theater when we can watch a movie on our phone? Like, why do we need to go to the theater when we can watch it at home where we're not going to be distracted by people? In fact, there are some movies that I've walked out of the movie after watching it going, I wish I had stayed and watched it in the theater or at home because like, why did I need to see that in the theater? So, studios need to be picky and choosy of what they put out in the theater and what they put on streaming. They need to start making they need to work on streaming. That's the big thing. They need to fix that because not everybody gets paid well in streaming, and it's just kind of pathetic. Um, but yeah, so there's just a lot going on and in this world and this economy, and uh, it circles back to Clerks because Clerks was at that time period was a movie that sort of I didn't see it in the theater because I didn't know about it or whatever, never heard of it. And then when I did watch it on I don't even think it was DVD, I think it was VHS. I absolutely fell in love with it and thought this was amazing. I need to own this movie. I need to own it forever. I and if you listen to the commentary track, there's two. There's a newer one and the old Laserdisc one, and the Laserdisc one is so great. There's introductions, all this stuff. I mean, Clerks is an amazing film. I always kind of go like right now, Chasing Amy, I think, is up on my wall, but like Clerks very well could be up on my wall because it's such a great movie that it's kind of hard to say if it's which one's my favorite, Clerks or Mallrats. No, Clerks or yeah, Mallrats or Chasing Amy. All three of those. Those are the original Jersey trilogy, and I just absolutely love them. And if I had to rank them, I don't even know how I could do that now. I don't know which one I feel. It's really at the time because it's gone from I used to love Mallrats, and then it was Chasing Amy, then it became Clerks, then it went back to then went to Jane and Silent Bob Strike Back, and then it went to, all this stuff. So Clerks 2 at one point was one of my favorites. I love this shirt, this movie shirt. I absolutely love everything Kevin Smith has ever done. Even the bad stuff, like I'm gonna say it, hate to say it, Yoga Hosers isn't the greatest movie. I'm not a big fan, but I will still watch that over the Marvels. Like I'm sorry, I would rather watch Yoga Hosers over the Marvels any day. Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. I like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back more, but I still love Reboot a lot, and I will watch any Kevin Smith movie over a lot of Hollywood movies. Now, give me Captain America, Winter Soldier. I think even Kevin Smith would agree that some of like Yoga Hosers, I would definitely pick Captain America. But I don't know about this new one. It looks good. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I am very I'm not skeptical at all. I'm just kind of interested to see what happens. I'm gonna see it like opening day. I'm not gonna listen to people badmouth it or whatever because they're reviewers and audiences are gonna just tank on things because a lot of people don't want superhero movies anymore, so they're gonna do what they can. I'm gonna go and completely, ready to just with an open mind. I hope movies just get better. I just want a story that isn't things being thrown at us and making us feel like Thor: Love and Thunder. I felt like there was a lot of things being thrown at us that there was some cool, fun stuff, and then things were just like thrown to make me feel sort of weird. And so I absolutely love Clerks. It is one of my favorite movies. If you haven't seen it, once again, go watch it. It is, uh, I guess I spoiled it. He doesn't die, but if you want to see the alternate ending, you can. Also it has like on that thing is the flying car short, and that's just hilarious. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll talk later. Bye.